very excited by this process. The last 2 days have been so much fun. We've had awesome turnout at all of our sessions. It's been really cool getting to listen to people talk about what they love about Joplin and what they're excited about in Joplin and all those different pieces. Bringing Ben in has been a really cool exercise in kind of analyzing who we are and where we're going. And I'm hoping that's what he's going to kind of help show us here today. So we haven't seen what he's going to show us, so we're just as blind as you guys are. So I'm first going to introduce Keith from Missouri Main Street, who helps us coordinate all of our things that we do, and then has helped bring Ben in as well. So thank you guys.
Thanks for, Lori said all the things I was going to say, so she did a great job. Thanks for all the attendance at the input meetings. We had great feedback, great participation. It's a very unique, dynamic community, and so it's been fun to be here. We as Missouri Main Street are here to support the Main Street program, the Downtown Joplin Alliance, and have been doing that for the past 3 or 4 years, helping them grow and develop using the Main Street template, and so it's been fun to watch the progression and their advancement. And this is just one of those pieces that we're able to bring to the table, is to bring Ben Muldrow here to provide this branding expertise. So he's the featured presentator today, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. How's everybody doing? Good. All right, so I hope you can all imagine this is a little nerve-wracking. Everything that you see was created since 24 hours ago, yesterday, I guess, is when we finally wrapped up at the coffee shop and they let me go to work. I've done this process in over 600 communities in 40 states and 5 countries. One of the cool things about doing this is when I go into a community, the things that are unique to a place kind of rise to the top. And it would be easy for me to jump right in and show you the recommendations, but that would make it too easy. We're going to make you earn it. So you have to listen to all the things that I learned and all of my clever observations and my quippy little comments. So we'll just kind of work through all that together. But I will do my best to get you out of here by 1. I know some of you actually have work to do. So there's a big theme that I want to help promote here in Joplin, and it is the theme of simplify. You all have figured out ways to create a tremendous number of messages. There's a lot going on here. And this is just a quick sample of just some of the logos that we found from the community, right? A lot going on. So one of the things that you will see with these is there's not necessarily a lot of coordination going on. What happens is a lot of times when communities are working on projects, they end up getting in this kind of project-based vacuum and they create designs as needed, and then everything is only for that purpose. And then next thing you know, you've got all these different things happening, but because they're communicating in completely different ways, there's not necessarily a sense of momentum. There's just project-based things and updates, but not this connectivity that's driving to a sense of things happening. So I always like to start with history. I like to learn as much as I can about the community. I was able to find some really cool stuff here in Joplin. The first thing that I came across goes all the way back to 1893. And it was the adoption. This isn't actually the first seal, but 1873, the adoption of the first seal of Joplin. And that seal had a series of lead bars. It had a shield on it. It had a cross. Let's see, what did it say? I lost it. Pig lead. Pick and shovel. Had pick and shovel at the top. And it said lead is king. So, they're sitting there cooking with gas. We're mining lead. We've got a lead strike. Doing it. We got our lead, getting our lead out. And then fast forward to 1917, and all of a sudden, we really like zinc. So we need to change our seal, right? So they change their seal. They add their miners with their little sunshine hats, and they adopt the new seal, and they go from lead is king to zinc is king. And this is still the official seal of the city, so it's lasted 103 years. The next thing that you come across things like city flags. You've got a city flag that the city adopted in the 90s, I believe, very typical approach to the way that those come together. It's kind of interesting. The banner in the top right corner's got 24 stars on it. I knew exactly what that meant because we developed a brand for Marceline, Missouri, and I was like, wait, when did Missouri become a state? I need to figure out how many stars I need on this logo I'm designing. So that made complete and total sense. Then we start to jump into some of the organizational identities. Now, obviously, we're working with Downtown Joplin Alliance, but there are a lot of different entities going around. So the four that I typically focus in on the most because they're doing things that really overlap a good bit is our chamber, our CVB, our city, and our downtown organization. So that's what you see a little bit. There's some nice color coordination going on between CVB and downtown, some very complementary colors with the chamber. You see the city adopted logo with the miner's helmet in it. When you start to dig into some of the city stuff, there is some variation there. They created a separate logo for the trolley system. You got a separate word type for gateway signs with the message, the Midwest at its very best. So you win extra points for rhyming. Rhyming always gets you some extra. Dig deeper into the city itself. So you've got your city government, but then you've got departments and commissions underneath that with design variation that happens there. Now, this right here, is anybody here from Parks and Recreation? Okay, so we can talk about them all. No. This is so very typical in the city dynamics where you've got a city government, the city government's out telling its story. A lot of times the only thing that it has is the city seal. And Parks and Rec is doing fun stuff, and they're like, come on, we need something that's got a leaf or a tree on it, right? It's like, that's what we do. We're doing fun stuff, we're doing fun activities. So completely makes sense here that the Parks and Rec have their own brand subset. That's very, very typical. They're delivering product and service directly to the consumer here. The Historic Joplin Preservation Commission, you see those a lot with historic properties and also connected with the kind of administration of design guidelines. From there, we look at arts. There's a lot of different stuff going on with arts. We've got a newly introduced Joplin Arts District logo. We've got SPIVA, C2C, murals throughout the community. Chamber of Commerce. Chamber wins some points for understanding the power of using color and using the color over and over again. So this main chamber logo and all the colors that you see are derived from the main logo. That's seems like a simple concept, but it's amazing how often that doesn't happen. So kudos to you guys. Then even looking at things like sports throughout the community, a lot of stuff going on, but not a whole lot of coordination. And even just kind of public side and kind of goodwill, One Joplin, Give Joplin, Mission Joplin, all these, put any word in front of Joplin, we did learn that. But then let's kind of come back around with DJA. And Downtown Joplin Alliance is an organization. One of the big things with all the logos that we've looked at, there is no graphic way that a business that's located in downtown can say, we're in downtown. There's no tool that's meant for them to use that. So that's one of the big things that we want to be able to introduce is this simple idea of downtown Joplin. And downtown, I'll kind of hit on that a little bit more, but underneath this umbrella, Empire Market, which got a fantastic brand system. They've done a really good job with that. And some brand extension that makes its way into the events. I think that again, when you start to hear and see images of what happens Third Thursday and some of the events that go on here, this is an organization that's really creative. Some of the things that are coming out of this community as a whole are really great ideas. I mean, Wizarding Run, okay, that's awesome. You know, so you start to see these interesting, cool things and you start to say, okay, we need to figure out how to make sure that we're leveraging all these stories. And then the other thing that I think we have to address is this interesting movement that happened, and you all are not alone. Roman Mars delivered a fantastic TED Talk, who, if you know anything about Roman Mars, he runs a podcast called 99% Invisible, and he talks about the power of design in communities. And he gave a talk on city flags. And we've seen a wave of citizens who were looking for some way to connect with pride. And we've seen these flags emerge. And I think sometimes you get into the question of, well, what's official versus what's not official. Community is a collection of people. And when you have a collection of people who love a place and they're motivated to create something to represent that place, then that's always a good thing. You know, we can get into some of the official semantics, but at the end of the day, you have a community-driven process that represents something that people like, and that's good. You don't have to adopt it formally for it to carry value. Does that make sense to everybody? Like, last thing in the world I want to get into is, should a city officially adopt something? The city's a government. You know, they have an official flag, and that's fine. That doesn't mean that you can't have other graphics that represent the place. Any community should be interested in tools that help people show the passion that they have for their place. And I think that's something that we can all kind of agree with. And it's interesting to see how this community-driven process is starting to make its way into some design efforts through the community, and things like Choose Joplin, which is simply an opportunity to say, hey, look at all the great stuff happening here. Look at this. This is a great place to live. This is a great place to do business. It's a great place to invest. So that's kind of what I saw as the graphic foundation. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Then from there, the next thing that hit me was a very interesting dynamic here. You guys love districts. You have a lot of districts. I think that there are actually districts for districts inside of districts. And I don't know if I said or not, but I own a planning firm. I deal with planners. I hire planners. Planners love districts. And I think the first thing that I always like to dig into is what's the purpose of a district. And in Joplin, it makes complete and total sense why the community has all these different districts that you talked about. It's because your downtown's huge. Okay? You have a physical place that is giant. You have served always as a regional business center. You're a downtown that is larger than your population has ever been able to support singularly, because you've always been a regional capital. So when you have so much space that you're trying to manage, it only makes sense. We all know the phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, districting seems to be a way that you can subdivide a big project into manageable chunks. But the byproduct of that is sometimes dilution. Okay? So I heard about everything from Sunshine Lamp District, Innovation District, Joplin's Arts District, Historic District, Big Brick District, Entertainment District, the Depot Nuclear Fallout District, the Coffee Next to the Gentleman Club District. Like, you've got so many dynamics, so many potentials. But I want you to be comfortable with the idea that you don't have to break all these things down just to be able to share with people that you have certain values. The first thing I want to highlight, though, is you do have 5 National Register historic districts. Those 5 National Register districts all bring with them potential funding through tax credits. Okay? So in that particular function, a district provides you a benefit. It's not as much that it needs a public side awareness as it is providing you a tactic for revitalization and reinvestment. A lot of times, I know we've got this newly created arts district, and I was able to talk with Linda about this a little yesterday. in a lot of states, you create an arts district, and with that designation, the state level arts council invests in the district. So you create a designation to trigger funding. So what I would love to share with you all is I really kind of simplify this down into two main thoughts. When you're exploring districts in your community, I think that you should only explore districts when they meet one of two qualifications. Is the district activating funding, or is the district acknowledging a pre-existing connection that has happened organically? Those are the things. If you honor the vernacular of the place, or you use district designation as a funding tactic, those are the things that say yes. You do not have to name something an innovation district to be innovative. You don't have to name it an entertainment district to be entertaining. Those are all facets of a district that everyone knows and understands called downtown. Downtowns are expected to be innovative. They're expected to have jobs. They're expected to have farmers markets and brew pubs. And those are all the factors that you should be able to deliver with your downtown. Does that make sense? It's like a known quantity to a certain degree, and you just have to make sure that you're delivering on the diversity and the expectation that people have come to truly be passionate about with America's downtowns. Everybody good with that? Is that not freaky to anybody? All right, well, guess what? Now we're on to the good stuff. So brand elements. I believe that a good community brand system is built off of four main components: colors, typeface, approach to graphics, and message. When you develop a brand for a community, you do not have any power. That's what makes branding communities different. There's no control. As we saw, we started with a slide with 7,000 logos on it. You know, there's absolutely no control. You can't make another group do something. So when you brand in a community, you brand through inspiration. You brand through the passion that people share for the place that they are working on to make better. So just like with everything else, I like to start with colors. Colors are really easy to connect the dots. These are just 6 of the entities that we're pulling from. Our color map is all over the board, right? Again, when we start to look at downtown, there was some interesting synergy happening between Chamber, between CVB, between the Downtown Alliance. I wanted to pick colors that were vibrant, colors that were bright. I wanted a color system that was broad enough that it gave us colors to work with. I didn't want it to seem too narrow a palette, because that oftentimes reads as very institutional. So what I did was I looked at the colors that seemed to replicate themselves, that seemed to exist in the community, took inspiration from things like Empire Market, things like some of the elements that the Chamber's doing throughout the community, things like the community-driven flag, and I landed on the 6-color palette. Got a warm white, kind of orange, turquoise, yellow, light blue, and kind of a slate gray. I think it's called, I don't remember what it's called. Do you remember what it's called, Ivy?
No, I don't.
Something, it's got a really fancy gray name. So what that does is that allows you to have kind of a narrower field to pull from. So now all of a sudden you can use colors to connect things visually. So then from there, I started to look at typefaces. Now again, typefaces were all over the map in the community, but most of the organizations started to lean towards a cleaner, more sans serif typeface. Now, I want to give a quick word of warning here. I think a lot of communities are convinced that if they consider themselves to be a historic community, that they have to have an old-looking font. It's like, well, we've got great history, so we need to use papyrus. That's not actually the way that this works. Believe it or not, history is something that's told and shared. It's not something that's simply implied. And that's why we heard a couple of times people were talking about Wild West. This place was the Wild West. Well, that's great, and that's a great attribute to have. But Wild West is a dictatorial style. And I can tell you, you all don't need to use any typeface called Stagecoach. That's not the road we're walking down. That's not the key to our economic future. That's the acknowledgement of part of our past. So what I did was I selected 3 different typefaces. 2 are different variations of sans serif typefaces, and 1 is a script handwritten typeface, so it kind of had a human element to it. And this is what they look like. If you don't know what in the world a serif is, when I was in school, my teacher taught me that a serif is a doohickey. That's the official term, the little doohickeys that come off the edge of the letters. The thing about sans serif typefaces, a lot of times you might look at them and you're like, that feels cold, that feels a little bit sterile. They're actually designed to be content neutral. They're designed to have no personality on their own so that you can infuse the personality that you want your community to possess. Has everybody heard of the typeface Helvetica? So you all have it on your computers. Helvetica is Crate and Barrel, Bloomingdale's, Jeep, Walgreens, they all have the same typeface, but dramatically different companies and different meanings. So from here, once you kind of land on the typefaces, the thing that I start to look at is your name. We want to be able to present the name Joplin consistently over and over again. So what I did was I actually created a custom variation of this primary typeface. So this is what it looks like if you type it. And then this is the customized version. Now, are any of you design nerds? Okay, a couple of you. Everybody else is not going to care, but I'm going to make them listen to this. So if you look, what I've done is I've overlaid it. I wanted this to be perfectly round, so I literally made perfect circles at the top and bottom of the O. Our curvatures are all in there. I actually brought this idea of the crossroads that was derived from that flag. And not just crossroads, but crossroads set at the lower western quadrant, paying tribute to your own location in the state. Believe it or not, you do not have to have an outline of the state of Missouri with a star where you are in your logo. There's no rule that says you have to do that. Thickening up some of the L, bringing in some curvature. This is actually paying tribute to the typeface selected for the Choose Joplin, and then even curving over some on the end. So now all of a sudden, with this word type, what you have is you have the ability with no other graphic commitment to be able to start showing connection. Okay, so organizations can, without changing their logo, simply adopt a word type and be part of the system. Now, as you're going through the creative process, there are a lot of ideas that you find out are really, really bad. So I like to share those with you as well. Just because we're focusing on downtown and just because you refer to yourselves every now and then as JOMO, you don't have to go down the route of Doto JOMO. Even though people love repetition and cleverness, that didn't make the cut. So congratulations on that. Part 3 is our graphics. With our graphics, the thing that I wanted to do, going back to that theme, simplify, keep it clean, keep it simple. I really looked at 3 main components to derive this inspiration. Your brand equity that exists around the Downtown Joplin Alliance and the things that they do in the district. You've got this great system with Empire Market that's both professional and expandable. And then you also have these concepts that were derived from a community-driven process and kind of had community input and community votes. And then that carries over to that 4th part, which is what we call the message. And with this, I try to write a brand statement. And this brand statement is a narrative of the things that I heard you all say that are important to who you are as a place and where you're going as a community. So I'm going to do my best to read this for you now. We started out as the definition of wild, But here in downtown Joplin, the frontier was tamed. The land's hidden treasures unearthed, and the path to the west was opened up. For nearly 150 years, people have been drawn here to take a chance. Joplin has always been a symbol of opportunity, a symbol not of the easy road, but of the proud road of determination. That spirit is still alive and well today in our beautifully preserved historic downtown. You can be taken in by a place much larger than you would expect, once serving as the downtown for residents of Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. You can see that in the spirit. You can see that spirit in the vibrant arts that surround us. You can taste it in our unique flavor. We are all the things a downtown should be: arts, culture, connectivity, energy, innovation, and opportunity. And we are not done. New investment is everywhere. Mom and pop businesses deliver real service. Local restaurants feed our hungry soul. People are filling the streets downtown. The Empire Market is reinventing fresh, and entrepreneurs are once again taking a risk on Joplin. That is our spirit. That is our pedigree. We invite you to come explore this place we call downtown, the place that is creative, colorful, connected. Downtown Joplin, where cool is king. So it gives you that opportunity to create something that, again, it connects the dots, connects back to your history, provides you this interesting evolution from lead to zinc to another four-letter word. But again, it's a very, very clean and simple approach. When you start to digest the destination brand, you start to see you've got this simple system. It's built up of simple geometrics, making a stylized J that can come to represent the community. You've got the ability to expand that. We've got that JOMO variation. We've got variations that are horizontal, stacked. They scale down. You can inset images in those, building meaning into that icon itself, kind of highlighting into that. One of the cool things that we heard as we went around through the community was we heard this interesting connection to the butterfly. We saw everything from the mural out at the park to seeing that the city actually designated a multiple month period dedicated to the monarch. And we wanted to just give you ways that you could see how you could expand this message to connect in with different things like that. So here you can see this kind of stylized J represents the butterfly with this simple message, spread your wings. You start to look at how it makes its way into organizational brands, and obviously the Alliance is that primary charge of ours. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create something that tied into some of the pre-existing identities, tied into the fact that they're the stewards of creating a destination in our downtown, but something that also helps us to convey that they're kind of built off of this 4-point approach to revitalization. So you can see I just created a variation of the flag, incorporating in 4 primary colors of the system with that highlight star signifying a destination that people want to be. From there, you can actually see the colors come to represent that 4-point approach, and your organization has taken a pretty interesting dynamic move to also adopt a 5th dedicated committee to the market and creating the market as a true destination in your community. So again, having all those components tie in to the mission and vision of that organization. The system is expandable. I'm not a huge fan of acronyms, I will tell you. That's one of the things I avoid, but I do know that every now and then, size doesn't allow you to say Downtown Joplin Alliance in every space, so we've created different versions that scale down. We've introduced this idea of what you're doing is you're really creating the crossroads of cool, and the organization can kind of use that as a litmus test. Are we putting our time and putting our efforts and putting our resources into creating cool. But if it stopped there, then the system wouldn't be thorough enough. It wouldn't be in the way where a community is going to benefit from it because it's too small a group that's connected to it. So without asking permission, I decided to look at the chamber brand system. Again, I think that in coming through this, a lot of the similar things that we saw, sans serif typefaces, clean approach to design, connectivity through color. So what we did, knowing that the chamber has recently gone through a shift in direction, where they are now carrying the flag that livability drives economic development. If you create and cultivate a place that people are passionate to live in, then the jobs will come because people want to love where they live. And I love that direction. I loved hearing that kind of that change of focus or just renewed focus from the chamber organization. So what I did here was simply, chambers are funny. There's this thing called chamber naming diplomacy, where typically the name gets longer as they attempt to make themselves more relevant. And I was really glad that you hadn't over time become the Greater Joplin Area Regional Chamber of Commerce, because that's typically how it goes. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, we all call it the chamber. So you create some sort of energy-driven icon that's focused in on connectivity and on people and on creating that network. You create brand variations for programs like Leadership Joplin that they have. Trying to cultivate this startup, this kind of energy, startup energy in the community, this connected support network and launching programs that help to fuel the idea that this is a good place to take a risk. Your Young Professionals Network, and then look at how clever that is. Joplin Innovate. Come on, Toby, you can do that, right? Joplin Innovate. That's got legs for feet and feet, right? So you can see where a system like that can. Good. And bought the domain. Can't go anywhere else with it. With the cities too, cities are again, they're very different. You've got, the city's got the seal, and the seal is adopted as a true resolution. Those aren't the kind of things that you want to change lightly, but making sure that you have graphic tools that tie in with that seal. Currently, the city logo has the integrated miner's helmet into the O, but you've got to remember that logo, it appears on a lot of different things. It appears on the website, helping to tell people a little bit about what the community is like. Then it also appears on permit, and also appears on official documents saying, hey, you run the rules, and we're going to find you. So, graphic to the life of the community. So, what I wanted to show a where you are so you don't change at all. But the city potentially word top variation word and what it is here with that cross in it that to me was kind of where I do and taking that and moving like you're facing and so it gives you this kind of stylized evolution concept while still standing into the ecosystem. Now again, the city deserves to go through kind of a greater process and thinking and how it is they want to represent themselves. And I know that right now you're in a search for new city administrators with a new city administrator. It makes for a great time to kind of think about this. But I always like to illustrate to the community how this can be adopted on that city level. Now, where it starts to get fun is with brand extension. This is where it starts to make its way into different tools that we might see. I always like to look at business cards. Business cards are kind of an important tool in communicating about an organization. With the Alliance, I'm showing two different variations, one for Lori, one for Ivy. So Ivy's focused in on being a market manager. So having this variation that can kind of change a little bit for a sub-brand of the entity. One of the exciting things that the organization has been working on is the growth and development and maturation of the Empire market. And one of the next tasks that they have is the revitalization of its roof. And what better way to do that than through a campaign called Raise the Roof? When you have to raise money to put a roof on something, that's not rocket science, right? So being able to kind of go through, start with this kind of quicker win. There's a grand plan for that facility that's truly going to be a very interesting experience generator for the community. But sometimes you just got to get the housekeeping out of the way. And that roof is a great place to start. It's also a great place to show a quick win. Hey, we said we were going to do something. We've got funds, and then we did it. I talked a little bit earlier about Choose Joplin, which I think is a really great movement. This shows a very simple adaptation where that campaign can kind of adopt some of these pieces to carry that forward, and then possibly even bring in the colors to create kind of a stylized version of the hashtag, making sure that the positive content is being generated and then connected throughout the community. Now, talking about the Arts District, one of the big things that I'm a believer in, especially with a community like this, is you all, with the presence of the arts that you have, and with a district as large as yours, one of the things I would love to see the Art District take on is the idea of a downtown Joplin public art master plan. This is something that a lot of communities don't do. They don't think about tackling it this way. But what you're actually doing is you are sitting down and thinking about a long-term plan for the presence of public art in your district to help motivate people to navigate through the district. So now that plan is helping you to justify the investment in public art as a circulator. And Linda already had that idea, and I just created a logo for it to make me seem smart, but you're on top of it, right? Yes. From there, parking. Everybody loves to talk about parking. That's the sexiest topic in any downtown. You know, you guys, how much should I spend? Okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes on parking. First of all, in a community, every community I've ever worked in has had a parking problem. There are 3 different types of parking problem. One's parking awareness, means people don't know where they're supposed to park. The second is parking management, which means you have assets, but you don't do anything to make sure those assets are working for the district that they serve. And then the third is parking capacity. Every single community is convinced that they have a parking capacity problem. But parking capacity is also the most expensive to solve at $22,000 a space to build a parking garage. So one of the things that we really like to start with is we like to start with the parking awareness. Make sure your parking amenities are signed. Make sure they're easy to find. A visitor to a community doesn't really care where they park. They just care that they park where they're supposed to park. I took a quick satellite image of part of downtown, and then I did an overlay of all the parking lots. That is a lot of space.
They're not all public.
It doesn't matter.
They have an arrangement with
It doesn't matter. I get that. That's like, I understand that they're not all accessible to all people all the time, but you can't, that's too easy a line to draw. You have to think about your physical space, and then you have to think about how much of your physical space is already dedicated to cars. And the thing that I'll tell you is, you guys, you have capacity. You want a parking problem. If Downtown Joplin Alliance does their job right, you will have a parking capacity problem. But right now, the main problem that you have is a consumer motivation problem.
Yes.
They want to park immediately in front of where they're going, and they complain about any walking that they have to do. So that's very typical. That's not unique to Joplin, but it's always important to kind of share that. One of the big things that we found, and one of the reasons I like to create these, is the Downtown Joplin Alliance has started discussing this idea of rolling out block captains. And with the block captains, they're going to have liaisons or ambassadors that are working directly with the businesses on those blocks. One of the things that we might look at creating is business card size parking maps that you can give to those business owners. Because right now, if you're a business owner and a customer comes in and says, God, parking down here was horrible, you ignore the fact that the customer made it into the store. And you just echo, my customers complain all the time about it parking. And all you got to do is with this card, this like virtually no cost card, you give it to them and say, sorry you had a problem, here are all the lots that are available for you to park in. End of conversation. They'll find something else to complain about, right? They'll start complaining about the sidewalks or something. So you'll just kind of work through that. But arming your business community with the ability to diffuse complaints is a great tactic versus building a parking garage. A lot easier to print 5,000 business cards than it is to build a 250 space parking garage. So doesn't hurt to start there. Wayfinding signage, the community has invested, what did we decide, 8 or so years ago, 7 years ago, in wayfinding signage. The signage helps to navigate you through the community. Wayfinding signage typically does have a certain lifespan on the blades themselves. They've been up 7 to 8 years. Typically, people say they're going to last 7 to 12 years, depending on the weather that they're up in. Yours look okay, but I do think that it's fair for us to start thinking about expansion of the system and then future replacement of the blades that exist. So I wanted to simply show you how you might be able to incorporate a slightly cleaner, updated design into that. One of the things, this is kind of a more interior gateway announcement into the downtown district. Anytime possible, find ways that you can incorporate zinc. Those are zinc panels. Helps, it gives you a way to kind of get the material background story into your materials that you're sharing with the community. The Trailblazer signs that you see here, they're by mandate, can only have 3 destinations on them. That's kind of a US DOT type thing. So being able to make sure that all these qualify for this fantastic device called the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's a great thing from the federal government. But then even showing smaller versions that announce National Register Historic Districts. Banners, you've got some banners throughout the community. One of the things that I do when I design banners is I design them pretty simply. I don't overdo banners. In fact, I would even say that you could do this exact same design and simply have the stylized J outlined in white and have them be one color. The reason why banners like this are important in Joplin is because you need to be able to stand downtown and you need to be able to look down the streets and have the colors of the banners tell you this is still downtown. This is connected. We had a great conversation about walkability yesterday and how some people might consider one thing to be downtown versus another because there's a gap in walkability. Well, when you start to lower the ceiling and create color continuity at the upper corners of the visual cone, you create that sense of connectedness that can expand the walkability of a district. So you see 4 different colors. Natural tendency as a community is, oh, that's great, I'll rotate the colors every pole. No! Pick a street and give every single banner on that street the same color. And then do a different color on your cross streets. So now all of a sudden your banners start to educate people about the district. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. In addition to that, one of the cool things that communities are starting to do is guerrilla wayfinding signage. This is a smaller scale, always bike and pedestrian oriented, very conversational in nature. So you could show how you could tie those into your brand system and just have these start to emerge to kind of drive that walkability, bikeability. I always like to look at merchandising as well. I've got 5 kids and they all wanted hydro flasks for Christmas. It was like they were asking for cars. Kind of amazing. But one of the reasons that I like to show things like this, these kind of premium products, same thing with like a Patagonia vest, there's this weird thing that happens when we talk about making merchandise for a community. And most of the time we always start in the exact same place. Let's find the cheapest shirt and order it. So we're going to put our identity on something that feels like sandpaper. When you go and you do something like this, you're performing what's called brand co-oping. So you are taking a value in a pre-existing brand and you are depositing some of that value into your identity. So if you're going to go through and try to position yourself as a base camp for outdoor recreation, then putting your brand alongside Patagonia makes sense. If you're trying to leverage, let's say, regional fishing tournaments, then you take your logo and you put it on a Columbia PFG shirt, and you're starting to connect the related brands and getting that co-op value. If you see me all week, you know I like hats, I always design hats. I think the thing that's interesting about communities is it is rare that you can go into a community and actually buy merchandise for that community that's not related to the local high school. It's one of those things where it's like, typically the community logo is developed by the city, and then a lawyer will say, we need to control this, we need to make sure nobody uses it wrong, and then they'll clamp it down and trademark it and lock it in a lockbox, and then nobody can use it. And then they get scared about this idea of, well, we use city funds to fund the development of this process, and I'm uncomfortable with the idea of a business profiting off of this logo. Profit. Please, profit. We want everyone to profit. We want businesses to make money off of the connection that people have with Joplin. So one of the cool things about this is it gives those resources to the community as a tool that they can freely tap into and use. And then I always like to hit on kind of the tail end implementation. It's all well and good to show all these pictures, but what do you do with it? So the first thing that I'm going to share is a comprehensive brand launch strategy. It's literally broken down into 3 phases, and it is a comprehensive checklist of all the things you would need to think about in rolling a brand out. So it makes it super, super easy for you to plan how you're going to roll this out. There is not a fixed order. That's a fallacy. People think, oh, well, you got to do this first. And no, you have to adopt it first. And then you just do whatever makes sense. Some people have a grant to do wayfinding in year 1, and others aren't going to be able to get to it for 7 years. So understand everything that needs to be done and then prioritize. The next is how to be a brand partner. This is intended for partner organizations, event organizers, and businesses in the community. And literally it is just a full page of ideas. These are things that you could potentially do with this. And if you do any one of these, you're a brand partner. So it's just kind of a paper brainstorming session. And then finally, we're even going to give the Downtown Joplin Alliance a score sheet so that periodically every 12 months or so, they can just score their own implementation, figure out what their brand score is, and figure out what makes sense for them to focus in on for the next wave of implementation and low-hanging fruit. Make sense? Okay, so I've been talking for 50 minutes straight, so now it's your turn. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's what I was able to do since yesterday. How many of y'all were that productive since lunch? No. What are your thoughts? I mean, does it make sense? Or do you see the value in some of the strategies that we're talking about?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, good. Silence. Let's go. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Did you leave out Kansas for a reason, or you just, it was a typo?
No, I
On
didn't
that
leave
one
it out for a
slide.
reason. I was going through and I was like, I knew that I had gone and, yeah, I guess it was a typo.
Okay.
I knew that there were 4, but then I was like, they kept saying tri-state, tri-state, tri-state,
Yes.
but it's really quad state. And so,
I think it's because
I-
Arkansas we usually leave out because it's further. But
Gotcha.
now
Because you
we're
can't
going there all the time and
Right.
they're coming here, so. But we.
Well, and it's
go
weird,
right,
too.
7th Street goes straight into Kansas, into Galena. A
right.
few minutes
right.
away, basically.
The weird thing to me was, and it's funny that you say we usually leave out Arkansas.
We use them, but we are putting them back in
Well-
because they're coming here.
Right. Well, and one of the coolest things that I came across was 19, and are you a historian? 1917 to 1977, the Ozark Playground Association. Does that sound right?
Gateway Playground.
Gateway Playground?
It's all part of the Ozark Plateau, so that's
Gotcha.
geographically we are connected to Arkansas.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just interesting to me to kind of see that, like, I mean, that's a pretty historic tourism drive to position, I mean, in my mind, to kind of position you all as this gateway kind of into that point south. So, but that's a great point. I'll add that in. There were a couple things I spelled wrong too, but I always give that creative license. I was rushed. I was rushed.
So some of this stuff is gonna be available, you had said before, for all of us.
Yes.
And I'm very pleased because, and I thank DJ, Lori, and all of you guys for bringing this in, because it really helps me for what I'm trying to do with our committee, because I see that we're right on. And that makes me feel very good. We're confirmed.
Good.
And I think that what you're doing is a lot like what the chamber and many people are doing right now, is we're trying to start fresh.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like I heard that. I will tell you, I do this every week, pretty much every week. I'm on the road about 42 weeks a year. And I don't get to pick what communities I go into. So that means sometimes I go places and I really, really like them. And sometimes I go places and I'm kind of like, I cannot wait to go home. And that's just the way it is. I have been so impressed, not just with the place, but more so with the people that I met. I have been thoroughly impressed, and I'm excited for you all and for your opportunity. And it's rare for me to say that. I can't think of a place that I've been recently that I feel so excited about. Okay, so what are you going to do next? Like, what do the next 3 years hold for you all? But it does not take long at all for you to get in and start to see there's some pretty amazing energy here. There is a momentum. The momentum might not have made it to like the public level awareness, but that kind of inner 10% that knows what's going on it's a pretty solid group, and I'm excited for you all because it's just the opportunity is obvious, and hopefully in seeing the way that by adopting a system like this, you can kind of eliminate a lot of time sitting around a committee table talking about things that maybe don't make a whole lot of difference. So you can focus on the things that really make a difference, the things that are the passion points that are bringing those groups together. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Did you also purposely leave out Route 66?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that. I did leave Route 66 out on purpose, and part of the reason, just like Wild West is dictatorial, because you get cowboy hats and stagecoat and six shooters. Route 66 is also it's a dictatorial design style. Like you can't incorporate it a little bit. It's like it is what it is, and it automatically dictates certain design. I'm assuming, based off what I saw, that the wayfinding signs that are up, the design of that sign seems to me to be inspired by Route 66 era. Like that, I don't know, but that's what it feels like. If I had been writing that brand statement as a true community-wide brand statement, I would have gone back and forced myself to figure out how to put it in. But as I was going through and making my list of the elements I tried to hit on, the thing that I landed on was Route 66 was a vehicle to get people out. And in, but I mean, it's one of those things where right now, the story of Route 66 is a story of old. And that's an important story to our visitor story. It's an important story to our community-wide story. And I knew that it was being told, so I felt comfortable not putting having trouble. It was one of those things where it was like, it fell into a middle of a window that if I hit on it, it's like I'd be hitting on it as kind of a random, oh, and by the way, we also have Route 66. So it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be in there.
You had it in your design, one of your designs.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Route 66 is more important to our perspective. When you talk to your 12-hour shift worker at a factory, that is not an important part of the story of the community.
well, and the other thing is I've branded multiple communities along Route 66. And I hope this doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. Like, the thing that I love about Joplin is the opposite of Route 66. It is the fact that it's new and fresh. And now, if there's an emergence that comes up with kind of adopting some of this really cool retro style neon and some of that kind of stuff, like, you know, the spirit that you see in Wilder Sign and that kind of stuff, if that starts to happen, then absolutely. But the thing that's so interesting here is you have this story of new. You have this story of renewal. You have this story of new architecture and new investment and a story where you're able to kind of own a little bit of your own history because you all were here to watch this community both redesign and rebuild post-tornado, and that gives you a level of investment, new investment, that is very different from a lot of communities. So I think that it's one of those things where it's like figuring out how to take that competitive advantage and make it work for you along the Route 66 travel corridor is kind of the thing that lands on the CVB. And I feel like they're getting people through here already, but being able to tell that story goes a long way. Yeah.
So Lori, what is the timing of taking this information to implementation? And the reason why I ask is that we, as the Cornell complex, are asking that very branding question. And if, with Christina sitting right there beside you, so if I heard you correctly, it's, the recommendation is downtown, and utilizing these colors and these graphics and star in the center and lower quadrant, and using all of this to tie us together even though we have subsets
Right.
of that.
Yep.
So if, whether it's the Arts District right now, or whether it's the Cornell complex down the road, or it's the entertainment district, or whatever subset
Right.
that we keep kind of, you know, challenging ourselves with a little bit.
Yep.
It seems to me what I'm hearing is this recommendation for an overarching that brings continuity of the
Exactly.
chamber, all of these areas, arts, entertainment, restaurants, you know, all of, so to me, I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, what's the plan? Because we're moving forward, but yet we don't want to get ahead if the consolidated decision is, this is what we want to do as a downtown, as a Joplin
So,
community.
yeah, so Lori, I'm gonna have Ben explain what happens next.
Yep.
From the community's perspective and the organization's perspective, which I think will help answer that question.
Absolutely. So typically, what we always like to shoot for is we like to shoot for no more than 4 weeks from today to deliver the final resource package back to the community. So we're going to feed the whole presentation back to Downtown Joplin Alliance. We're going to hopefully, I'd love in the next 2 weeks to be able to give them a window to listen to you all, to reconvene, to analyze those recommendations and to offer refinements. And then the thing that's interesting about this is it's a living, breathing system. So after those refinements are made, I'll create the full resource package. I'll create a style guide telling folks how to use it, how not to use it, define all the colors, package together all the fonts so that you can have that, tap into it. Every single logo that you see will become yours, and I'll save all the different variations, and it can kind of break out to the organizations as they see fit. Anybody who likes what they saw can use it, and anybody who wants to take it and adapt it is free to do that as well. This is not like a weird like trap where you start to walk in and then there's some sort of weird hidden bill. So the goal would be feedback from them in the next 2 weeks, final delivery, and share with community partners by the end of February.
And so then, what have you seen in the communities that you have delivered this? When and how do the aspects of the community gather and say, we agree?
No,
Have
I
you experienced, or how does that work? Or
think
not?
typically what happens is the resources are made available to all the organizations for free, and it's voluntary.
So
The
you
folks that
basically-
want to use it,
Oh.
start to use it.
With Lori's blessing, open sourcing.
Exactly.
A palette, a typeset, and then each of our organizations, boards, the city council, if everyone gets to the same boat, it could look something like this. It could be an airport logo, CVB logo,
Mhm.
Parks and Rec logo, City of Joplin logo, chamber, downtown.
But it's like the opposite of a controlled system. It's like you go through with that open source base, and then you empower the organizations to use those tools to best accomplish their own mission,
What-
their
The
mission.
most interesting part of this is just the externally, if we have so much, when people think of Joplin from outside of Joplin, and we all brand in a way that's unified, it's exponential, the impact and identity of our communities. Where we're trying to get on the map, if you will. If we are to be the base camp of the outdoor belt that is Bentonville, Springfield, and it gets more interesting there because collectively we're way stronger than we are individually. And when we talk about our components of our community, to the Bentonvilles and Springfields and people that used to live here that might aspire to come back and join us, it'll be interesting to kind of tie it all together that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, y'all. It's 1:05. I try my best to keep it right an hour. Keith.
You also want to talk about the recording?
Yes.